Welcome to virtual worship, Rise Virtual Worship. Today is January the 16th. My name is Amanda. I am thrilled you are joining us. We had to pivot a few minutes ago when we realized something was really wrong with our software. So we're coming to you Facebook Live, the good old-fashioned way. Sometimes the old-fashioned way is indeed the best way. So let me move us along here and let you know that you are a gift. We are thrilled that you are joining us, whether it's now or later. Please remember your life has meaning and purpose, and we give thanks for you. Go and be a gift for and to a world that needs you. We, several weeks ago, probably at this point a few months ago, started a new tradition of sorts, and that is we begin every worship gathering with our welcoming statement. This statement reminds us of who and whose we are, and in a sense, why we exist. So I encourage you to lean in and listen. It may or may not be in the chat, not sure, but here is our welcoming statement. Rise believes that God has open arms, and so should we. Our Creator wants us to love, accept, and affirm every human being, including persons of every age, race, ethnic background, nationality, gender identity, sexual orientation, family or socioeconomic status, educational background, and physical or mental ability. We celebrate our diversity and recognize the sacred worth and dignity of all. Everyone is invited and encouraged to join us as we seek to follow Jesus with mutual respect, understanding, and love. I want to segue to a few NOMO/FOMO announcements. The first one is we are virtual for a few more weeks until Omicron chills out. So I can assure you we will be coming to you live virtual throughout the rest of this month, and then we'll update you about what we're doing in February. We're really looking forward to gathering again at Pale Fire when it feels safe. Check social media so that we can give you quick updates by text. We are aware not everyone uses social media, and we want to communicate with you effectively. In the chat, you can find a way to sign up for Rise Text. I promise we are very thoughtful about what we send by text, and we don't send a lot. The Snow Good art sale is still happening, where you can order a beautiful canvas or note cards or prints of our mural that was on the wall at 60 West, and that probably is going to appear in the chat too if you want to find that. We're going to have that available for a few more weeks. If you purchase anything through the Snow Good art sale, a portion of that will support Rise. And then finally, we are bringing back our Deliver the Love ministry. We engaged in Deliver the Love, I want to say for 2 or more months last winter. Deliver the Love is our intentional outreach to and affirmation of our local healthcare heroes. So we are partnering with a wonderful community leader here named Joe Fitzgerald, and we're trying to help him coordinate community-wide efforts to support our healthcare heroes in the midst of this wave of COVID. One specific thing you can do is make some cards. Homemade cards are such a gift, and since it's looking like we're all going to be snowed in for the next few days, please write a message to our healthcare heroes or mass produce lots of cards, and you can drop them off at Pale Fire in our white collection card, or we'll find another way to get them from you. Just email us and we'll be glad to do that. Also, Deliver the Love is always joyfully accepting donations to help pay for meals. All right, that is all for NOMO/FOMO. We do want to know what you need. What are your physical, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual needs. A magical box should pop up. And if you would list your needs, or maybe you're aware of needs that others may have in the Harrisonburg-Rockingham area, put those in that box. We hold those in confidence and do our best to respond to those in a timely manner. And we probably are unable to show today's prayer video because of these technical difficulties, but here's what I think we'll do is we'll post it later.
I could go play it on the screen and point this at it.
All right.
We're gonna get real, people.
What's happening?
This is how it usually works. Except that we were having internet issues.
This is the prayer video!
Amanda says this is the prayer video, so we're getting there.
Oh.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Hannah, and I'm with my son. And Amanda asked us to speak a little bit about resilience. And I think we're all living in a time that requires a lot of resilience in the pandemic. But resilience is also needed in other parts of our life, like our family relationships. And one relationship that required a lot of resilience on both of our parts was, I think, learning how to trust, communicate, and be together as a family. So Buta came to our family in 2010. And at that time, I was kind of in a difficult emotional place myself and a mess of a human, just after our trips to Ethiopia and processing everything that had happened. And I think Buta was dealing with lots of change and experience that he had had in his early life. And he was certainly not a blank slate, right? He's a person with his own life experiences. And we had to learn to bridge a gap of trust and love and understanding, and that took a lot of effort. And I remember driving down the road when a song came on the radio by Jason Mraz called I Won't Give Up. And immediately I started crying because it made me think of our relationship together at that point. It was maybe 2011, 2012. And the song talks about looking into someone's eyes and wondering how old their soul was. And it just made me think of Buta and his life and his resilience and everything. And the song goes on to talk about being patient and knowing that we are worth it, knowing that we're worth the energy and the effort to both learning to trust, learning to be patient, because that's not something that comes natural to me, learning to communicate. And Buta, I don't know, what do you think about resilience when coming to America and learning to communicate? I think most people think it's about we learn to speak the same language, but it wasn't about English. It was about the language of love and trust. So
yeah, I think a big part of it, because it was like a new thing, and as a little kid it was hard, but I think I pushed past that fear and accepted that this was my new home and my new family.
how about communicating early on? What was that like for you?
Communicating also took a lot of resilience, but it was important learning the bad and the good things about life. But it was also important to communicate with my parents and to learn trust and also be trusted.
Thanks, Boots. So Amanda had also asked for me to offer a prayer, and I spent some time looking at some different reflections and prayers on resilience, and came across one that spoke to the reassurance we have in a truth that is bigger than us, that is bigger than our relationship as a family, and requires a little bit of resilience as well in seeking out those relationships with God. So if you will, join with me in prayer. Lord, your word promises that you will refresh the weary and satisfy the faint. Your truth nourishes the root of our us bloom in the desert. Your love revitalizes us when circumstances threaten to dehydrate our faith. When we are surrounded by dryness of uncertainties, fears, or change, saturate us with your presence, pour your peace into every fiber of our being until we radiate with resilience. No matter where you have us planted, help us bloom for your glory. We love you and we need you. Amen.
Amen.
So thanks, friends. I know that as we continue through this difficult time, the pandemic, we're all digging deep into finding that resilience. So stay strong, and we love you guys. Bye.
All right. I'm really glad that we figured out how to make that work. Thank you, Andy Hardwick, who is our tech guru. And thank you very much to the Kemper-Kite family, Diana and Bunta. That was amazing. All right. I want to plug our offering. We finished December in a really strong place. I believe somewhere around $25,000. I need to check. I need to double check that, and I'll let you know at the end of the service, but it was a fabulous month. So, and we really needed that. We continue to need your support. We have big dreams for 2022, and we're going to start to disclose those soon. In the meantime, please remember us. You can give through Venmo, cash, check, all sorts of creative ways. We would love to talk to you about ways you can financially support Rise. We have a special treat today, and that is live music. And so the amazing Audrey Shoup, who is an extremely talented musician, is here to play 2 songs that really speak to her about resilience, which is our theme for this series, and of course our theme for today. So, Audrey, take it away.
All the thieves will come confess. of masses, that he is God.
Woo! Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my goodness, that was so beautiful. Thank you, Audrey. And I am very aware that we have learned an enormous amount here at Rise about resilience, how to pivot very quickly. I was just sitting here in the midst of that beautiful song thinking, man, you know, a year ago, this would have really thrown me. I would have been frustrated and rattled, the whole like tech not working thing. And now it's just like, okay. So thank you, Tech Gnomes, for building my resilience. And I'm actually semi-serious about that. So yeah, this is our theme for this series. It seems timeless. It seems like a great way to start this year. And I want to introduce my conversation partners today. The amazing Kadie King, say hi to your fans.
Hi, fans.
And the amazing Nancy Gaston, say hi to your fans.
Hello, fan.
And hi, fan.
Hi, Nancy.
Hey, camera.
My best friend. All right, we're a little silly here today. I blame the snow. So, here's how this works for anyone who may be tuning in for the first time to live virtual worship at Rise. My job is to serve as a sort of facilitator and moderator and keep us moving along. We have a designated person every Sunday when we're live virtual to keep up with the chat, because we want you to please use the chat. Talk to us, and most importantly, talk to one another. We believe everyone is a theologian. Everyone has an enormous amount to add to this conversation. And how we do that, at least when we're live virtual, is primarily through the chat. So Nancy's job is to try to keep up with the chat and pull in at least some of what you have to say. Please be gentle with Nancy, because the chat comes at you fast and she can't get to everything, but she's going to do her best.
Hi, Johnny.
Is that your fan?
He was waving at me.
Oh.
Second fan.
Second fan. Let's get very clear. All right, and then Kadie is a literal expert on our topic today. No pressure at all. But you are, right? This is
Yes.
kind of what you do.
It is.
Can you tell the people why I say you're a literal expert?
So, talking about resilience, I am a children's therapist. I work with children who have struggled with many things in their lives. I've worked with as young as like 2 or 3. I work with adults too, but kids are just really fun. And I see so much resilience in the kids that I work with. And I guess it's kind of my job to help teach them to tap into that. So.
Yeah, your practice's motto is create resilience, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, it's fun to have her here, and today we are exploring resilience, particularly resilience in children, adolescents, and teens. So also, I made myself a note here to remember to say we are creating a resilience playlist. So I asked Audrey to pick 2 of the songs that speak to her about this theme of resilience. You just heard All the Poor and Powerless, which is perfect. But if you would, please put any songs in the chat when they come to mind that really speak to you about resilience. We want to emerge from this series with a fantastic playlist, or maybe even 2, the Rise Resilience playlists. So help us with that. We're also starting a reading list. So if you're aware of books that speak to you about resilience, articles, anything that one might read or listen to, podcasts are welcome too, put that in the chat as well, or email them to us. All right, last week we began with this same question, but it seems like a good place to begin again. Resilience is the capacity to recover from difficult life events. I looked at several different definitions and sort of sandwiched them together, squished them together, and created this, the capacity to recover from difficult life events. So Kadie, when you think of resilience, what comes to mind? Images, sounds, stories. It's a different way to define this idea of resilience, but what comes to mind?
Yeah, so with the definition of like being able to recover from difficult times, I mean, I think a lot about the clients that I work with, but I also work with these clients because I have a story and a childhood and experiences, and I've received therapy as a kid, and so I wanted to give back. But I think about how I was always kind of singled out as like the weird kid in my family, and there were a lot of hard things that were going on at that time. But as I think about kind of overcoming that, it really was like trusting myself, like coming into trusting myself, and I see that with so many of the kids that I work with, like when you can be confident in like, I do have the ability to do this. I do have the ability to wake up tomorrow and make it happen and do the things that I need to do and stay safe and all of that. So that's kind of what I think about.
Absolutely beautiful. Nancy, how about you? Images, sounds. What does resilience smell like? That'd be a fun thing to think about. We could start a candle line.
A locker room.
Oh, what?
A locker
A
room.
locker room.
We're not selling many candles.
Coffee.
It does smell, resilience probably does smell a lot like caffeine and coffee. I think of like, specifically we're talking today about kids, just their ability, like a lot of times kids are able to see things very differently than as adults, and our jaded brains get to think or see things, and I think that lends a lot to their ability to be so resilient, because they just see things differently. Yeah.
And I know you have alluded to, I think you mentioned this last week as well, but you have quite a story of resilience, childhood, adolescent, teen trauma. And so I'm realizing I'm here with two experts.
I was also the weird one in my family. So.
Weird ones unite.
Ducks.
All right. All right, here's a question starting with you.
Okay.
Are we born with it? Or is it Maybelline?
It's not Maybelline.
It's not Maybelline?
It's
Okay.
not Maybelline.
Probably not.
All right. But seriously, so we asked this last week too, and this segues well into our scripture, but I'm wondering, can you develop resilience? Are some people genetically predisposed to be more resilient? What are the factors that create a resilient person?
Sure. I'll talk more about that like later, unless you wanted to bring that in now, about resilience factors. But I think every human has they have the stuff, like it's in our DNA to be able to recover from situations and to be able to overcome traumas and such. But I think it does have a lot to do with like us developing our personalities, interacting with others, those that teach us to be resilient. Because when I think back to my childhood, it wasn't just like, oh, okay, one day I woke up and it was like, snap, oh, okay, I can be resilient. Like, no, like there were so many people guiding me along the way. So I think we can develop it.
Okay. Thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I think using the phrase like genetically disposed to be resilient feels so weird. I like to think everyone's born with the ability, but like a lot of it comes from the nurture, the support systems that you build, and the people that tell you you're going to be okay. I promise. You're going to get past this, and life's going to be better.
All right, well, let's segue into the story for today. I said this last week, I'll say it again. We've gotten quite a bit of feedback that a number of you would like to do a deeper dive into some Bible stories and scriptures. So we're trying to make sure we allow a little more time to wrestle with scripture. I love this story we're about to hear. It is not one that's heard as much. Man, there's a lot here. So this is really the only story that I can think of in the Bible, at least in the canonized Bible, that tells us anything about Jesus from about toddler Jesus to 30-year-old Jesus. There's a big part of his life missing, and this is one of the few snapshots we get into his life in those in-between years, into most of his life. So what's going on here, and Kadie will read it for us, is he has gone with his parents and probably larger community, I would guess, for a holiday of sorts. And they have traveled to Jerusalem. And then, man, he gets sassy. So, and before we get into this, I wonder, how do you envision adolescent Jesus? Like, have you ever thought about Jesus with zits? You know? I mean, but did he play Mario Kart?
No.
Okay, probably not. That would be surprising.
It was a little different. It wasn't as electronic.
That's right. That's right. But, I mean, seriously, when you think about it, I've said this many times, but we trap Jesus in stained glass windows and in paintings where he's staring off into space, typically with blue eyes and sort of, blonde highlights, which, no. But we forget then that he was a sassy adolescent. And so, I don't know, when you think about adolescent Jesus, what do you think about?
So as a mom who has a son who just turned 13, like a little over a week ago, reading this, preparing, this has never been more real.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, the sassiness, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure. I had a really hard time. I had to keep rereading Jesus' words because I kept hearing it in a different attitude every time, and I'm like, I'm reading too much into it.
Do you think he rolled his eyes?
Oh,
I think
I'm
there was the
sure.
sassy
Well, not only was he was 12, but also he was like God. So he's like, oh, come on, Mom, seriously, you don't know anything.
Regular
Come on,
teens
Mom
were
and
already
Dad.
kind of there,
Yeah.
So could you imagine?
Oh, I can't.
It was like, oh my dad, come on.
Yeah.
All right, so here is the scripture taken from the Common English Bible, Luke chapter 2, verses 41 to 52. Kadie will read this. Now, I want you to insert eye rolls and sass and exasperation from Jesus' parents at appropriate places while you're listening.
I didn't rehearse that, but I'll do my best.
We didn't rehearse any of this.
True.
No.
We did not. Okay, Kadie, go.
All right, Luke 2, 41 through 52. Each year, his parents went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. When he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to their custom. After the festival was over, they were returning home, but the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't know it. Supposing that he was among their band of travelers, they journeyed on for a full day while looking for him among their family and friends. When they didn't find Jesus, they returned to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple. He was sitting among the teachers, listening to them and putting questions to them. Everyone who heard him was amazed by his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were shocked. His mother said, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Listen, your father and I have been worried. We've been looking for you everywhere." And Jesus replied, "Why were you looking for me? Didn't you know that it was necessary for me to be in my Father's house?" But they didn't understand what he had said to them. Jesus went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. His mother cherished every word in her heart. Jesus matured in wisdom and years and in favor with God and all people.
Incredibly well done. I loved it. You're very convincing, Mary, in particular.
Yeah.
It's almost like you've been there. Okay, so they traveled for the holiday, right? The Jewish holiday, very important Jewish holiday. And he was gone. He didn't come with them. And they were frantically looking for him as they're traveling back home. I would love to know the conversation where they're like, well, I guess we ought to go back and try and find him. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh, my heart is beating extra fast as a parent for that realization. Like, he's not here. And then they get back and find him, and he's been hanging out with some really, really powerful people. That's the other thing to keep in mind. He was with some religious authorities who held great power and influence, and it took some serious courage or adolescent foolishness, one or the other, maybe both, probably to remain in that place of significant power and influence. But, all right, Kadie, where do you hear resilience in this story? Mary Joseph, Jesus, the teachers, they're an interesting part of the story that often gets overlooked. But where do you hear it?
At first I was like, how did they go a full day and be like, where's our kid? Ah, he's around. He's probably around. But then I was like, oh shoot.
Where is Jack?
Where's Jack? He's probably fine. No, when it gets quiet, that's when you're supposed to worry. So first, yeah, I just want to acknowledge that, like, that was there. And then they went back. They were looking for him for 3 days. That's the other part I can't imagine. Like trying to find your child in a city that you don't live in and looking for 3 days. And then, I mean, Mary freaks out. Yeah. Why have you treated us like this?
It's such mom guilt. That's the other thing. Like, she lays it on thick.
She wasn't like, oh my gosh, are you okay? She's like, why did you do this to me? Whatever.
Exactly.
She's pretty upset.
Yeah.
And then she says, we've been worried. We've been looking for you. And Jesus is like, why? Like,
I'm fine.
I'm fine. So
Yeah.
I think the resilience there, like as he responds, it also says his mother cherished every word in her heart. I think as she had kind of realization of the purpose for him being there, like that's where some of the resilience came in for Mary.
Mm-hmm.
We don't, yeah.
What do you think? Where do you hear it?
I mean, I was thinking from the opposite end about, as far as Jesus following his calling and, not listening to his parents very well. It's not like they told him to stay and he wandered off, but like just, following that and not worrying about making sure, checking in, sending a text message or whatever. And that takes some resilience too. Also, you won an Oscar, by the way, for your reading.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
An official Rise Oscar. Went there first.
I don't know. We've probably given them out before.
Your Lady Gaga statue will be in the mail.
Any thoughts about, second part of this question is, what would you say to Mary / Joseph? We don't hear a lot from Joseph here. It's interesting. But we're assuming he's in the mix, right? He's just sort of so typical Joseph, right? A man of few words, but you get the sense he's there. But what would you say to them in this moment?
Well, first to Mary, I would say, girl, I've been there. It's okay. You're doing great. Just keep going. I imagine that there were probably some different parenting styles going on there with Mary and Joseph as well. So I guess that would kind of depend on their conversation. But I mean, honestly, I would say to them what I say to the parents, like, you're doing great. It's never going to be perfect, but perfect is not the goal. Like, perfect is not the goal. You just gotta raise your kid and, like, I don't know, make sure they get to adulthood and then can.
I love that, because I think sometimes we forget that parents are trying to develop resilience within themselves as well. I sometimes cannot fully wrap my mind around how hard parenting is and how often I get it wrong. Pretty much on a regular basis, but man, does it feel good to hear someone say, hey, I see you. I see you, Mary. I see you, Joseph. I see you, parent. And I see that you're doing the best you can. I have to wonder, was she shaped in a family system that taught her resilience? We don't know much about Mary's background. But yeah, what would you say to Jesus?
Maybe talk with your parents a little more. But also, like, wow, like, you really get it. And that's what I love. That's one thing that I love working with kids is we don't give them enough credit. I mean, Jesus absolutely did, like, some really amazing thought and, like, his own understanding and teaching even at age 12. And I do know a couple kids that are around that age that could, like, teach something, but probably not, like, to, like, the experts at that time. So I would be like, wow, like, how, well, he made a good choice in, like, where he stayed, found somewhere safe, and he was following what God was telling him to do.
You know, what's striking me right now in this family dynamic is, I mean, at least from what we hear here, he wasn't really punished for this. I mean, you could hear her fear and exasperation, but I think the great temptation for a lot of parents would be, you know, you lose your phone for 2 weeks, or what? Good. Probably not historically accurate. Or, you know, you have extra chores to do, or blah, blah, blah. But you don't hear a lot of shaming here. You don't hear a very punitive posture here. And I think that's interesting. I mean, he gets a mild dose of mom guilt, but he seems immune to that, at least in this. But that in terms of what builds resilience. Maybe they went on to unpack this moment and process it. We don't know.
At a family meeting.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Or what's the chat saying?
Well, I was actually going to bring up some comments in the chat. One being Jesus's resilience being mentioned as far as, like, surviving on his own for 3 days and figuring out how to do that, and he surrounded himself by other adults and teachers, and that was pretty smart. Another realization as far as resilience with Mary. So Mary's realization about the amount of resilience she would need to be Jesus's mom. And then the sentence, we're going to need a bigger boat. And then there was another that said, oh goodness, I lost it. It just popped all up.
The chat does that, man.
Yeah, it does, and you lose stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, thinking about, like, the family meeting, right? I mean, how do you punish Jesus? No prayer for you? Like, you're not allowed to talk to your dad. Like, how do you punish Jesus? That's
Well, and this is
teenage Jesus, right?
Yeah, 12-year-old Jesus. And what was the appropriate response in this moment? And I would ask you from a sort of therapeutic perspective. So your kid, your 12-year-old is gone for 3 days. Now, I'm going to make the assumption that this was a different time and place and culture where the community raised children in many ways, right? The village, metaphorically and sometimes literally speaking, raised children. but still, you hear the panic in her voice. And so, yeah, what can we learn from this? And what can we learn from the way they might have responded to this?
I really like the response. I mean, it takes her a minute to get in there. But when she says, we were so worried about you, like to have, like for a 12-year-old, if your parent, I mean, he had like a lot of stuff already in his mind, but emotionally, like there may have been a little bit of anxiety there, like, if we're being realistic. We like to think of 12-year-old Jesus as just like, oh, he's got his stuff together, but like he probably didn't have it all together. And to hear like, oh, my parents really care about me. My parents like couldn't find me and they were worried, and my mom was so panicked that she was like in tears now. They really love me. Like that, and that's, yeah, I think that's
the way I picture this playing out, and I it's just totally my imagination, but was that he was there, right, around the teachers, around the religious leaders. He was naturally very, very interested in what was going on there. And I like to think he lost track of time, because that is exactly what I would do. And they left, and he didn't realize it. And when you look at it through that lens, and then, you know, it doesn't say he was with the teachers nonstop. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I like to imagine he went out and looked for them, and he might have been afraid. It would be the most 12-year-old thing in the world to do when your parents show up to act like everything's fine. I'm fine. But deep down inside, he could have been really, really panicked. That's an interesting way to think about this. And then, okay, there was some mom guilt there, but it is clear he knew he was loved. It is clear from this story that he knew he was beloved. We talked about that last week, about the baptismal story with Jesus and how he is named as beloved by God, and God says, you make me happy. But he obviously heard that from Mary, Joseph, and that family system as well, which builds resilience, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm going to go out on a limb here, again, surrounded by experts, but they clearly let him try things. He clearly was not on a short leash. They were not hovering parents. And I don't know, but I think I have read and heard that does, to a certain extent, build resilience in children when they are allowed to go explore and build a sense of confidence and trust in themselves, and to a certain extent in the world. But what do you think about their parenting style?
Yeah. So as you're describing that, I'm thinking of the attachment model that I work with so much, and so I use the circle of security, and with that, we look at the parents as being the support that the child comes back to, and there are generally like two times or two ways that the child needs the parent. When they're upset, when they're hungry, when they have like a need, they're on the bottom of the circle. They come back to the parent to get that need filled. But the other thing that kids need is the freedom to go out and explore, and to have someone to come back to and be like, oh my gosh, like I found this really cool thing, or oh my gosh, let me tell you about 5 million words about the latest Minecraft update. May or may not be a real example. But the kids need that. They need to be able to go out and explore. And so it sounds like they weren't just like, all right, fine, we're going, yank his arm, drag him along. Like, it sounds like they sat and listened, and like they showed interest in what he was doing. They showed interest in what he was learning and why he thought it was important to be there. They took him seriously.
They listened to him.
They listened to him. They took him seriously. I think we miss that a lot with kids.
What are you thinking?
I think, Jesus was 12 and coming into his own. That part of that interaction was kind of like realizing that he was becoming a man and leaning into, his adult life and what that was going to look like. And that had to be really hard. Yeah, that had to be really hard to separate that in Mary's head. There was a comment about that, and it said basically that she had other children that she was parenting as well, and it's hard to. It would be hard to like separate. Remember that angel moment that happened 12 years prior, in the communication, and sometimes, recognizing him as a different child,
One of those strange guys who showed up at her house when he was a toddler, bringing really strange gifts. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it had been a while. I mean, it had been, I'm going to guess, around 10
It's
years,
a decade, yeah.
right? And so in the day-to-day, getting the family fed, doing, whatever it took to maintain a household, I think it's easy to forget how remarkable your offspring are. Maybe that's not true only for Mary and Jesus. Maybe that's true for a lot of parents. The role of the community is really interesting here as well, I would say. Again, I'm reading some into this story, but it seems as though he was cared for by the community. Gonna guess somebody fed him. He found a place to sleep somewhere, but there's a lot to say about expanding our understanding of what it means and perhaps broadening our understanding of what it means to care for children and even build resilience in children. Gotta hand it to these teachers. They saw something in him. They were paying attention to. It would have been so easy to dismiss him, or to say, this is an unusual kid, run along now and, play. But instead they honored him. They honored his voice. And that builds resilience too, I think, when we stop and listen. Another interesting thing is, 12 is a really key age in Jewish culture. And so when you said he was becoming a man, in the understanding of his particular culture, that is the truth.
Bar mitzvah age.
Yep. So, anything in the chat before I bring us home?
Oh, well, they're talking about Jesus live streaming, playing video games, so carry on.
It really is fun to think about what it must have been like for these parents to handle teenage Jesus. And if you really sit with so many of the stories in Scripture, he was so very human. And there are moments where he's comical, there are moments where he's short-tempered, there are moments where he's tender, there are moments where he's sassy. And I don't know, I want to be able to journey with a Jesus who is sassy. And maybe with a Jesus who occasionally gets lost in time, maybe doesn't have the best sense of direction, and ends up hanging out with the religious authorities. Yeah, but kudos to Mary, and I'm gonna assume Joseph. They handled this remarkably well, all things considered. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, I think so.
All right. One final question, and then we'll bring it home. Who modeled resilience for you at this age, meaning the adolescent age?
Wow. A lot of people did. And it wasn't always my immediate family. Like, my mom modeled resilience in, she often had multiple jobs, and was just trying to take care of me and my sister. But as an adolescent, I also, like, my friends' parents were also there to model resilience. My grandmother was, my aunt was. A community would be my answer. My community.
Yep. Yeah, which is why it is important to recognize the larger community here, I think, for him. How about you? Who modeled resilience for you at around this key age?
Yeah, my initial thought was my mom, but I don't know that I recognized it as resilience until I got older. Just as far as like trying to do the best she could with what she had and what she was able to accomplish. But I also had a strong community of teachers and local like coaches in the local area at the rec center and stuff like that really helped model resilience and continue to pull me along, and teach me how to do it.
Yeah, I've heard you talk at times through the years about the importance of teachers, people
very crucial for me.
Recognizing your abilities and naming them. And I think that's in a sense what happened here. All right, we could keep talking about this. Kadie has some really interesting information to share about creating resilience in children and adolescents, so maybe we could get that posted for anyone who's interested in reading more. I have good news. Audrey's still here, and she's going to play her second song, Head Full of Doubt, Road Full of Promise by the Avett Brothers. This speaks to her about resilience. Audrey.
There's a darkness upon me that's flooded in light. In the fine print they tell me what's wrong and what's right. And it comes in black and it comes in white, and I'm frightened by those that don't see it. When nothing is owed or deserved or expected, and your life doesn't change by the man that's elected. If you're loved by someone, you're never rejected. Decide what to be, go be it. There was a dream, and one day I could see it. Like a bird in a cage, I broke in and demanded that somebody free it. And there was a kid with a head full of doubt. So I'll scream till I die, until the last of those bad thoughts are finally out. There's a darkness upon you that's flooded in light. In the fine print they tell you what's wrong and what's right. And it flies by day and it flies by night, and I'm frightened by those that don't see it. There was a dream, and one day I could see it. Like a bird in a cage, I broke in and demanded that somebody free it. There was a kid with a head full of doubt. So I'll scream till I die, until the last of those bad thoughts are finally out. There was a dream, and one day I could see it. Like a bird in a cage, I broke in and demanded that somebody free it. There was In the fine print they tell me what's wrong and what's right. There's a darkness upon you that's flooded in light, and I'm frightened by those that don't see it.
Oh, Audrey, that is amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What a gift. What an absolute gift. And what a perfect song for this particular story. I was sitting here thinking, I wonder if Jesus ever had a head full of doubt. It's an interesting way to think about what he might have felt like at 12. Anyway, we're sitting here looking out the windows and the first flakes are falling. So I checked the weather this morning and it said 11 a.m. Turns out they were right. So we're gonna wrap this up. Stay warm, stay safe, and enjoy the beauty of winter. I sometimes need to be reminded that winter is beautiful. So I'm gonna lean in and enjoy this. I want to plug our offering one more time. I checked actually, and we came in December around 28,000. It was a very strong month. We had some very lean months this year, so that is an enormous gift. We continue to need your support, and there are many ways to give. All right, our final blessing today is taken from a poem written by a pastor, scholar, theologian, writer named Nadia Bolz-Weber, and this comes from a larger piece she wrote about the story of the raising of the widow's son in Nain, also from the Gospel of Luke, also an incredible story of resilience. So we pulled a piece from this. I do want to let you know, Nadia is really honest. She's really real, and that's part of what makes her writing so beautiful and I think sacred. So, Nancy, bless us with Nadia's words, please.
Indeed. Bless the things we mistakenly think are already dead. Bless our rocky marriages and our college-age kids who smoke too much pot. Bless the person at work who we love to hate. Bless the young adult who wonders if they are too young to really be an alcoholic. And bless the 60-year-old woman who has had too much work done. Bless the public school lunch ladies and the guy who stole my kid's bike. Bless the chronically sick. Bless the one who has no one. Bless what we call insignificant and what you call magnificent. Bless it all and love what only you can love. The ugly, the abandoned, unsanitary, and the wash of humanity upon which you have nothing but a gleaming compassion when we have none.
Ooh, I've had all the chills, whether it's the live music, the power of this conversation, or Nadia's words.
Or the snow.
Or the snow. That might be part of the chills too. Friends, you are a gift. You are loved. Thank you, amazing tech crew, Andy, for making this possible. Thank you all. Audrey.
For being the camera stand.
Yes, yes, he is the camera stand. Audrey, you're amazing. Woo-woo! We'll see you next week.
See you next week.